Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined once again by Jeff Robinson and Ed Pye. Lads, we have had the second round of the Pacific Four series and taking place in the United States, this time in Kansas City. I was looking forward to a 5:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff until news came forward that it was going to be delayed, and then I got more news that it was going to be delayed, and it's like, is there any dry part of the United States at the moment they could have been playing in? Probably should have wished that the Storm kept going, because what unfurled in that game was pretty much a game of two halves, I'd say. Going into the first half, the Black Ferns looked strong. You know, a new coaching setup, new players getting some time. Continuation from the game they had against the USA a week prior. So no changes to the match day 23. And obviously that time together paying off. But they were unable to convert or get out of their own way. There was like lots of missed passes, lots of handling errors going on, multiple trips into Canada's 22, and they only came away with one try in that entire half. Canada, on the other hand, I think there was a lot to be said about this. You know, we were going into it, you could hear the commentators talking about another match in this steamed rivalry between these two nations. Obviously, an incredible World Cup semi-final between the two, less than like half a year ago, and still fresh in everyone's mind. And then we get this game. Obviously the rain and the storm had an effect, just like it had against Canada's game against Australia, but the style of play that Canada were implementing in this match, it was a far cry from what we had seen the last time these two played. And interestingly, when Canada did go back to their total rugby style of play that they used, that immediately ended up with a try by Asian Hogan Rochester. And so she gets the first try of the game. Again, the Storm having handling errors and such going on between both teams that it took a while for that to actually happen. And then, nearing the end of the first half, Canada get a driving maul going over the line, and then it looks like New Zealand had been able to withstand the pressure and able to rotate the maul back and prevent Canada from scoring a try. Then, only for the ref to declare it an illegal takedown of the maul, and it was a penalty try for Canada. So, instant 7 points. So going into the second half, Canada were 14-5 up. Little did we know that would be the last scoring opportunity for Canada for that entire game, because New Zealand then responded with 31 unanswered points, the last two tries of which were intercept tries, and ran away with the game in the end. So the final score, Canada 14, New Zealand 36. And I think this was, as Kevin Roy put it, a big reality check for these Canadian players. Ed, what did you think of the game?
It's definitely a learning lesson for this Canada team. I think whenever you look at how an international team prepares and builds, everybody talks about the World Cup cycle. So as soon as one World Cup's finished, you're suddenly in this new cycle of building up, introducing new plays, new structures, new players. And I think Canada probably came up against a New Zealand team that's also in a rebuilding phase, and they're building, from what it appeared, a squad and a game plan that is far more test-like than what they played at the World Cup. When we think about the New Zealand World Cup team, you're talking about players like Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe, Braxton Sorensen-McGee, your Georgia Millers, these seven players. So they created a game plan that was very much based on the attacking skills of those players. This New Zealand team that played Canada in this game, the focus was all on the ruck.
Mm.
Uh, Kuiper, Olsen, Baker, their loose forwards, all of the New Zealand players were just pressuring the ruck with such huge intensity that Canada just couldn't cope with it. I mean, just a couple of stats to highlight that. The top two carriers for Canada were Gallagher at the back with 14 at fullback, but then Peltier was the second highest carrier with 11. There wasn't one loose forward or one forward in that top 10 list of carriers in that game. When you compare that to the Canada game at the World Cup, where Peltier was, she was sniping from the base, but then looking and finding players like De Goody, your Fortezes, all of those, really strong running players that Canada have, they were completely negated by the fact that New Zealand was flooding the ruck area.
Mm.
And I don't think Canada quite dealt with that. Peltier running 11 times means that she was looking to get that offload, but she wasn't able to do it because they were flooding in with their defense. They were pressuring the ruck the whole time. Another stat to highlight that, turnovers won 15 to 6. New Zealand
Mm.
15, Canada 6. So that's a huge amount of possession turned over for Canada. You can't really play an international test and expect to win when you're turning over double the amount of ball as the opposition. Um, I mean, on the good side of things, the Canadian maul was really good. They
Mm.
were getting, I'm surprised they didn't go to it a bit more. That maul drive they had with the penalty try was a strong maul that was really looking like it was going over for the pushover try. And then obviously there's a New Zealand player that dived in the ruck and tried to collapse it. So I think that was a fair penalty try. There was a couple of occasions when Canada went back down into the New Zealand 22 where they had opportunities to maul again and they ran line out moves instead. I would have liked to have seen them go back to that maul because it was clearly dominant over the New Zealand line out as well. So I think that's an area that's obviously working well for them. They should try and utilize that a bit more. They need to tidy up their rucks. There was several times where they didn't have a securing player, and that's what led to all of those turnovers. Um, and a couple of things in the second half where, you don't quick tap a ball in your own 22 when when there's 15 minutes to go and you could get your own line out ball by just kicking it forward. So a couple of small, and the first intercept that New Zealand got, they passed it in front of their line, so it was a risky play. They still had 7 or 8 minutes there, and they were down by 2 scores. So that's something they could have, it's just a little bit of experience there, a little bit more of a heady play there would have probably, I think, put them in a better position to have a closer score. And saying that, I think. Um, right at the beginning of the second half, Julia Omokoali had a chance, very close, got pushed into touch, but she was very close to going over. I think if Canada scores there, all of that pressure goes on to New Zealand being two
Mm.
scores behind. So, the game might have been different had Canada scored right at the beginning of the second half. Unfortunately, they were able to put her into touch, and then all of the pressure came onto Canada, and Canada didn't really respond very well to that. I mean, Amoka Harley was probably the best player in the game. She made a number of dominant tackles.
Mm.
She was great on the run. She was one of the highest tacklers in the game. But on the other side of that, there was 21 missed tackles between four players. Tessia, the captain, was had 5 missed tackles, which is kind of unforgivable at test level. So you got to be making those tackles. But then, Forteza missed tackles as well. It was a lot of missed tackles there, which didn't help them when it came to the score blowing out. I think, just in terms of the score overall, there was a couple of lucky ones at the end that were more to do with Canada trying to chase the game rather than New Zealand win it. So I don't think they're too far off there. I think there's a couple of moments there. If the game goes slightly different, then it's a much, much closer game. But I think New Zealand's ruck defense and the way that they approach that basically was the difference between the two teams.
Mm.
Hmm.
Jeff, what were your thoughts on the
Well,
game?
there's a lot to take in there. Thank you, Ed. A couple things. To me is a game of emotion, and the team that more motivated as a like they're both motivated. So don't take it away like saying Canada wasn't, But the team that's more motivated often has an advantage. And I liken this game, I'm going way bit back there to referencing to New Zealand Canada, sorry, New Zealand England game from 2004 men's. That was after that World Cup when the year before England went down and beat New Zealand in Wellington, where there were two yellow cards at the same time, down 15-13 and like that. And it was a game where just New Zealand wanted it more. It was obvious from the beginning. New Zealand wanted that game more, and they hammered England. This is in a way similar. It's, I think, coming off the World Cup, a very disappointing World Cup semi for New Zealand. Maybe they thought they deserved better. I'm sure they did. And I think uh, they just wanted it more, to put it bluntly. And I think their emotion was more in check. They were more motivated for various reasons. Yes, both teams are starting a new cycle, so I'm not that upset about the loss in that regard. I think because Canada's starting a cycle, as Ed said, introducing new players. The weather was crap, uh, and I think they were just against. They're playing a team that was really wanted this game. This is probably the game they circled on their calendar at the beginning of the year. They
Hmm.
want they wanted to beat Canada.
I think, sorry,
Yeah.
Jeff, just to talk about New Zealand for a second there. One of the things I think that happens with New Zealand is they're constantly walking this tightrope between knowing that they have some of the best players in the world
Mhm.
and knowing that that's not the best way to win at test level. You need to have, as you say, that motivation, that
Yes.
hunger.
Yeah.
You can't just cruise by on your skills and your ability. You have to have that desire to win. And I think, yeah, that was a big difference between what happened at the World Cup in the quarterfinal with
Yeah.
Canada and what happened in this game.
Yeah, I think they clearly just wanted it more, and credit to them for showing up. To the game itself, I think the ref could use an instruction manual on the offside line. To be honest, not so much at the ruck, but clearly players. I mean, that's where they were getting that pressure on the back line on Canada. They were coming up, I thought, early, quite a lot of often. And I think the ref didn't have their greatest game. One thing that got me, I missed what was the New Zealand yellow card for, but I was surprised that I swear the New Zealand didn't get a yellow card from that penalty try. That surprised me.
Yeah, that I think
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
new rule that is
not automatic anymore.
it's been coming into play. It's being implemented in like other leagues. So
Mhm.
I think it's in Super Rugby at the moment. That is that if the ref decides that it's a penalty try, they don't necessarily have to have a yellow
Okay.
card,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
that's not reflected in every league. Like I'm pretty sure. While that is in like Super Rugby W or Super Rugby Apuki, I don't think that's the same in Premiership Women's Rugby. So I think like many of the Canadians may have been like shocked of like, oh, we got a penalty try. Wait, why are there still 15 Black
Yeah.
Ferns on the field?
And to be honest, if it was like, I mean, God, I don't know how the ref could ever judge that. But if it's like an accidental bringing down, if you understand what I mean, not an intentional,
Yeah,
then you can argue that a yellow card is not necessary there, like that. But then how would a referee ever be able to judge that?
yeah,
Like that
um,
consistent, that'd be a tough call.
yeah.
Uh, just the other point I would want to make too. I also hate to say, I think Canada was lucky to be ahead at the halftime because Dylan dropped a lot of ball on very promising plays in the first half, and that goes back to my motivation. I think clearly they just mentally wanted this game to prove that hey, we're still a top dog.
Yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. I think so interesting, Ed, that you mentioned Georgia Miller because she was not available for that semi-final match between Canada and the Black Ferns in the World Cup, and clearly she made a world of difference being in the game now. And while I think that you can mention like, oh, Olivia Apps, Alicia Corrigan, they're currently with the women's sevens team at the moment. You can also mention that a lot of Black Ferns players that were at the World Cup were also with the Black Fern Sevens as well. So I don't rate that excuse at all.
No.
I think New Zealand came into this game knowing what they had from the semi-final, seeing how England performed against Canada in the World Cup final, and they knew that their breakdown at the last World Cup had been so fast with like the ruck speed, and they knew that if we want to get on top of Canada, we have to, close down that speed. We can copy what England are doing. We can commit more tacklers to the ruck, try and get the turnover, and clearly that was successful. I'll also couple that with the fact that, Canada at the same time were playing a much slower pace from the game. Kevin Rouet had also mentioned that, by the time you get to the World Cup, especially the World Cup semi-final, Canada had been collectively together for a couple of months at this point. Not only just the World Cup, but also the warm-up games as well, and all that preparation and that continued community together, being able to interpret what your other teammates are asking for. By this point in the Pacific 4 series, Canada have been together for about 3 weeks. And when you're bringing new players into this environment, and you got to have a bit of grace for them to get with the system. At the same time, your system has been shown on a global stage. There are a lot of coaches seeing you decimate the Black Ferns in that semi-final going like, how can we stop that? Or how can we do that? Or how can we stop another team from doing that to us whilst we're doing that? And it seems like the classic thing to beat any team from New Zealand is you just got to out-attack them. And that is very simple to say, but it is very difficult to achieve. But yeah, I think that this was the monkey off the Black Ferns' back. They want to be like, no, that was just a one-time instance, the first time in however many years that a team has beaten us at the Rugby World Cup, but we're not going to let it happen twice in a row. So they were on their top form. I think, Canada needs to, play a faster pace of style, or be able to play a faster pace of style, because the Black Ferns were clearly choking them out wherever possible. But, there were instances, again, it was Asia Hogan-Rochester that's the one who's scoring tries, and it's because the ball is getting out and wide and able to get over. Chloe Daniels with only the one conversion in the game, but right on the sideline is shows that she has the accuracy for it, especially after a few missed kicks in the game against Australia. So, I can see some positives in the game. Ultimately, Canada are now third in the world because of this result, which, oh no, only one of the top 3 teams in the world. However will we cope? No. And I think the only disappointing factor is that now we have to wait an entire year for Canada to face the Black Ferns again.
Yeah. Just one more point, Son said, just one more point. One other thing I noticed that was I thought a stark contrast between the two sides was New Zealand's tactical kicking, I think, was also much better. They got a lot more distance on their kicks. They're clearing a lot more space when they're clearing their lines or just kicking the ball off of a possession, and really putting Canada back on the back foot too. I think that's another area where Canada needs to address.
Yeah, they actually found a lot of space on the edges with Ruahe Demant kicking crossfield to a couple of the wingers there. So they found space there. Just one other point here. One player that was a complete non-entity in the game is the world's best player, Sophie de Goody. She was targeted. She barely had an impact on the game. So they're going to have to figure out ways to get her into the game if teams are going to target her, how to best utilize her. Is it at lock? Is it loose forward? What's the best place to play her? Is she getting enough game time to be ready for games like this? So that was something that New Zealand targeted as well.
Well, speaking of Sophie, sorry.
Just final thought for me was, I will paraphrase it, this was maybe Canada's first big test in a new cycle.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm not terribly worried.
No, me neither. I think this was the Black Ferns game to win, in the sense of they needed to win more than anything else. And, it is what it is. It looks as though the Black Ferns will be going to play Australia for the Pacific 4 Series title and not the World Cup final, because Canada did that last year. But speaking of Sophie de Goody, we've already had the team announced for the game against the USA this Friday. She is in the back row again. So decisions are being made, positions are being found or moved around. And Forteza, I believe, got injured in that game, and she is out for the series, which is only one more match. But we wish her the speediest of recoveries, as well as Caroline Crosley as well. And so we are therefore going to the final game, and it's against the old enemy of the United States of America. And that game, Canada versus USA, will be available this Friday, April the 24th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, I mentioned the Sevens teams earlier, and we have the first round of the Sevens World Championship to talk about. The first round was in Hong Kong, Hong Kong celebrating 50 years of Sevens. Incredible achievement. And because of the World Championship, it is reverted back to a 12-team structure. So we will be going through that information in that style as we do. So the pool games are 3 pools of 4. And depending on where you finish in the pool, you will then even go for the cup final or the, I think it's the plate final, or lots of finals going on, but basically to decide the rankings. Now, this is the interesting thing. Sevens themselves haven't actually explained how things are going to go in terms of if the top 8 teams continue and the bottom 4 teams get relegated to Sevens too. It's not really been clear. It's not really been understood. There's not been a press release that I've seen. But, we're going to play on the side of caution. And obviously, the higher you finish, the more likely you are going to be in Sevens 1 next year. So that was Canada's baseline of what they needed to do. So they were in a pool with Great Britain, South Africa, and Australia. The first game, a 41-7 win over Great Britain, and they followed that up with a 31-0 win over South Africa. And they concluded the pool with a 17-19 loss to Australia. That puts them into the Cup knockout rounds, and they began that with a win against the old enemy, the United States of America. They then went into the Sunday needing to go and get 2 more wins to lift the cup. Unfortunately, they were up against New Zealand, and that was a 12-31 loss. But they were in the bronze medal match, and unfortunately, another loss, 7-31 to France. So that means Canada finishes 4th in the first round and puts them on 14 points. Obviously, there's only 3 rounds, so there's not really much to go over at this stage, but we will give the current standings of New Zealand in first, Australia second, France third, Canada fourth. What I'm interested in as well is the bottom 4 teams, but first of all, I'll go to you guys. Ed, what do you make of Canada finishing 4th in the first round of the Sevens World Championship?
Yeah, I mean it's a tight tournament. Those losses to New Zealand and Australia. I mean has got a great team, the Levi sisters, and New Zealand obviously I think has the most influential player in the world, men's and women's, which is Georgia Miller. Um, Playing for them, I'd be interested to figure out how they determine who plays sevens and who plays 15s, because a couple of those players for both teams, New Zealand and Canada, would have made a big difference in the 15s game. So I'm not quite sure how is it just player preference, or is it is somebody saying, hey, you need to skill up in these areas, you'd be better for this team versus this team. It'd be quite fascinating to figure out how they actually they figure that out, and maybe we can get some guest speakers on the pod to speak to that. But yeah, I mean, Canada were close. The 17-19 to Australia there is obviously a close result. That goes another way, and then Canada plays a different, playoff cycle, which might put them closer to the final there. The loss to France a little bit disappointing, but I think overall it's a pretty good tournament for them. Sevens can swing on a dime, so I think a 4th place finish is good. Players like Olivia Apps running full field tries in. You love to see that kind of thing. So I don't think Canada are too far away from being at the top there.
No, and Jeff, we've gone over Sevens Division 2 and seen Canada barely scrape a couple of wins across all three rounds. How good does it feel to see Canada get 3 wins in a matter of one weekend?
Oh, much better, obviously. Hopefully the men can have more luck on that in that regard too, in with whatever tournaments they'll be in. But for the women's game, I mean, the only loss to me that's a bit concerning, and Ed touched on this, would be the France one. I mean, the 17-19 loss to Australia, yeah, unfortunate, but still, I mean, that's still a good result. I think Australia has been, especially the women's team, has been very good on sevens
Yeah.
lately. So, you can't credit them keeping it close. The New Zealand loss, yeah, that's a bit wider margin, unfortunately. But as I said, the France loss is the loss that is the only one I would be seriously concerned about. It was that like a mental lapse thing where after they failed to make the final, they, you know, they kind of they just couldn't mentally get back up for it, so to speak. Like, was that a case of that? Mental fortitude is always a key part in rugby. You don't get like those 2, 3 minutes that you can get in other sports to kind of get your mind back in the game. You have to kind of really be on it the whole game, or you can get down a lot quickly. So
Yeah.
that's what I would be concerned about.
Yeah, speaking of concerns, looking at the bottom four teams for both men's and women's. So at the moment in the women's, ninth place is Brazil, 10th is Great Britain, 11th is Argentina, 12th South Africa. We've seen from Sevens Division 1 so far that Great Britain haven't been really reflective of their former Olympic challenges. So it doesn't surprise me that they're currently at the bottom. It's the men's side that's causing a lot of uproar. In ninth place, Uruguay, one of the teams to come from Sevens Division 2, so that's understandable. Great Britain in 10th, again, point I made. Germany, again, team from Division 2, struggling with... But in 12th place for the men is the USA. I think that's a big shock to a lot of people watching that tournament. That was a team that you'd expect to be, definitely pushing, if not for the top 8, but, ninth or 10th. 12th? God. Well, I mean, it could be worse. I mean, the USA could be hosting Olympic Sevens in a couple of years. Oh, wait.
Or a World Cup.
Here's a question for you guys. I'm not sure if you saw a friend of the pod, Dan Tanner with 99 Social, put a comment up earlier this week asking, should they get rid of all of the funding for sevens and put it into women's rugby, women's 15s rugby, which created a bit of a stir because some people were shocked that he would be ignoring sevens, and other people thought that obviously a lot of the growth that's come in the game has been in the women's game. I kind of made the point that back in 2012, 2013, Rugby Canada took a lot of the funds away from the 15s team and put it into the sevens, all based on the sevens going into the Olympics. And what we've seen from that time is the Canadian men's team on a huge downward spiral. So maybe that funding made a big difference. And now we see the men's sevens team not really competitive either. So is it better to put those funds into the women's game where we are seeing an upward trajectory?
Well, about the sevens, I often said back in the day when this came about, I said to people in 2014 that Rugby Canada drank the sevens Kool-Aid and went all in. They thought it'd be a golden ticket, and I think they expected it becoming an Olympic sport to have a much bigger profile, and I think they just thought it would spread naturally to all parts of the rugby. I think that's I mean, hindsight 2020, that's clearly turned out to be a massive miscalculation and a massive error by Rugby Canada, and I'm sure they're not the only union to do that. But speaking of that, I would not honestly be in favor of could they even redirect? Because a lot of that is government directed funding or rugby directed funding. Could they even do that? But why would you just put again all your eggs into one basket again, which is what he's saying?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely put it into the 15s game. I think the 15s game is a more broader game, and then you can siphon players into the sevens as necessary.
Yeah. I'm gonna, strike the balance in between the middle, take all the money from the men's sevens, put it all in the women's sevens, and I think we've got a, golden product for the USA. Now, the next round of the Sevens World Series won't take place until May, but we do have some Canadian rugby coming up. As we mentioned, that game, Canada versus the USA, is available this Friday on TSN. And if you want to catch any more rugby, we have the continuation of Super Rugby Pacific and Japanese League One on Premier Sports, as well as some MLR games. We have the Prem on Sportsnet and URC on urc.tv. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces on our website, therougerugby.ca. We're also available on Spotify, YouTube, and across social media, all at the Rouge Rugby. Ed, where can people find you on social media?
All the social platforms, Rugby 101.
And Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me on X at WP Rugby Jeff.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's all we got time for this week. Ed, Jeff, thank you both for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.